All right, welcome everybody to Indivisible Text Ledge Live, October 10th, 2020. Happy Saturday. I am super excited to welcome James Withrow, a fellow Indivisible Text Ledge organizer, a part of the Leads team, data extraordinaire. James, thank you so much for joining us today. Really excited about our conversation we're going to have. How are you doing?
It's an honor to join you, Alex. Thanks for inviting me. I really appreciate it. I'm doing great today with my Zoom background and pretending to live in a villa in France, just off the Riviera. And in a few minutes, I'm going to pretend that I'm an expert on data.
Right. Well, we definitely know the latter is true.
Ah,
Well, so we're going to talk about some very interesting data and looking at some great maps that you've prepared to share with us. And this is really looking at the Texas demographics. Um, so let's go ahead and jump into this. James, when you're ready, feel free to share your screen and we will go into what you've prepared for us today.
okay. Am I sharing my screen correctly?
Yes, I see your presentation full screen here.
Okay, excellent. So just like a decile is a tenth of something, today I'm sort of pretending a sextile is a sixth of something because I'm going to split Texas into 6 parts. And while it's true that sextiles isn't usually used in this way, in fact, it's not used very often at all, I'm going to go ahead and use it so I can get the syllable sex into my presentation. It's hard to work sex into data that I do, and so I just try every time I can.
Well, I
Uh,
think you're doing the ultimate thing. You're making data sexy, right?
but
That's the big goal.
you really have to try hard. Okay, uh, so I have split Texas into six equally populated districts here. The fourth district, as you can see, is kind of split up into 2 parts. But each of these colors and districts actually represents a sixth of Texas. All of this I've done through Dave's redistricting app, which is online. It's available for anybody to use, and at davesredistricting.org. It is an excellent resource. It's mostly so that people, just average people like me, can practice being redistrictors, and so we can draw maps of Texas with 36 or 39 congressional districts, and talk about how we would do it if it were up to us. So excellent resource. All the maps that I'm gonna share here are also available at my new Twitter feed that I've done just for this purpose. It's at James Tex Ledge, and I'll have that address up several times. The maps that I'm showing here today, I've pinned to the top of that Twitter feed to make it easy for people if they want to look at it later. And it's a place people, if they want to ask me any questions or complain about how I've done things, that's a good place to do it. This isn't, what I'm about to do isn't of academic quality. It's just, what a part-time amateur does, and that's about the quality that I'm talking about. But I can say that each of these sections has about the same number of people in it by about 1 or 2% difference. Harris County has almost exactly the same number of people as Dallas and Tarrant County put together. And if you take all the suburban counties that touch Harris, Dallas, or Tarrant, the ones that are in yellow there, that's about another equally populated group within about 1%. It's just kind of a coincidence that these things happen to be true. And then I contrived another district in kind of a reddish color there, District 3, that's sort of the border, plus San Antonio. That also has about the same population as the other ones I just talked about. And then I split Texas in half, kind of east and west. And like I say, the populations of each of these groupings are the same now, but that wasn't the case before. even, and I'm using 2018 census estimates that via Dave's redistricting to do this. And the 2010 census would actually have the suburbs at about a 6% lower population, and the gray Eastern Texas area would have been about 6% of Texas's population bigger than the rest of it. So which is to say that while all of these areas have actually grown in population over the last 10 years, the suburban counties are growing at a much faster rate than any of the other areas. Houston, actually, the Harris County area is actually growing at got about a 2% increase in the state's population by these estimates, which is kind of interesting. And the Borders County were actually a little bit lower. The border counties are actually kind of declining in the share of Texas's population. They're still growing, but it's not as quick a rate as Houston, the Metroplex, the I-35 corridor. So anyway, with that in mind, here, Dave's Redistricting app gives us a chance to also look at some statistics on those districts. And I put the districts up in the upper right-hand corner so you can kind of see what the map looks like. But the border district and Harris County and the Metroplex, or at least Tarrant plus Dallas, those in 2016, those all voted for president on the Democratic side. The other districts, the suburbs and East and West Texas, voted more Republican. Obviously, the border district is much more Hispanic. It's almost 70% Hispanic. But the other districts, especially Harris County and kind of the West Texas area, 5, those are over a quarter Hispanic also. So those are the stats. Like I say, available at that Twitter feed if anybody wants to look at them in more detail. Each of these districts has about 4.6 million people in it.
So this is amazing. And if we can go back real quick, James, so just looking at this data and the way this map has been organized helps digest a lot of things when you're thinking of Texas and looking at where just the population accumulation of Texans are within this state. And so just to highlight a couple of things that you've mentioned, when we're looking at the top 3 districts, which you provide the data, kind of lean in the Democratic space, and the bottom 3 districts leaned in the Republican space. One thing that does become apparent in this district is how the percentages in the demographics are broken down. So in the top 3, the white percentage is under 50% and has larger increases of different groups, minority groups, or Hispanic, Black, and Asian. And then when we look at the bottom 3 groups, that's the majority, over 60% of the population is the white population. And just to highlight, that's the suburbs around the urban areas of Houston, Dallas, and Fort Worth, as well as kind of West Texas and East Texas that we're looking at. And so I think it's just so insightful in looking at how people are voting and how race and the demographics are playing a part in that.
And I should mention, I would like to point out that some people may think that the suburbs are wider than they really are. About a third of the people in the suburbs are one minority or another. If we divided white Texans into 6 groups like that, the suburban 4th district could shrink a little bit. Both the Harris County and Tarrant plus Dallas districts would have to expand a little bit because there aren't as many white people in those districts as there are in the suburbs or East and West Texas. Notice that the border county would have to take in a lot more, border district would have taken a lot more counties in order to have a sixth of Texas's white people. That big reddish third district, just a little trivia thing, voted almost 50-50 for between Hillary Clinton and Trump in 2016. So it was almost exactly even. So that's kind of interesting. I don't think it's nearly as interesting as some of the other demographic sextile slides that I have. So I'll go into Hispanics. We just counted Hispanic people and split them up into six equally populated Hispanic districts. Notice that Harris County would be more than one district on its own. So Harris County has more than a sixth of the Hispanics in Texas. The Rio Grande Valley, which is really just the four bottom counties in Texas, has about 2/3 of a district on its own. So Harris County has more Hispanic people than the Rio Grande Valley. San Antonio plus the districts, plus a few counties to the north of it, would form about a sixth of the Hispanic population. And likewise, West Texas has, is pretty good size there. But there are a lot of Hispanic people in places from Odessa to Amarillo too. There are quite a few Hispanic majority counties out that way, actually.
So when you're looking at the first two breakdowns that you have between, white Texans and Hispanic Texans, I think one thing that's interesting is in terms of census data is how people are identifying within that space. And so how does that help? What does that tell you in terms of looking at these maps and how I think there was an article around the census around, how different groups in the Hispanic and Latino community utilize the census to identify so that there was, different demographics for different reasons, either, identifying as white or identifying as Hispanic and Latino. Do you feel like any of that approach, just the data is overwhelming in terms of the population in the Hispanic Latino community, that that is making an impact in any of this? Or what are your thoughts around some of that?
Well, as you know, with you and in other settings, I've done presentations on Hispanic people in Texas, their populations, and provided some facts about them. And so those are, probably maybe after the election, when we're focusing more on redistricting. Maybe I could do another presentation on redistricting or kind of go into that a little bit more depth. Mm-hmm. But I will say that some of the more interesting things about the Latino population, not only in Texas, but the rest of the US, is just how well in the last 20 years they have advanced in education and economics. The college attendance rate for 18 and 19-year-olds, about the same percentage of Hispanic kids that age are going to college as white. It's actually a little more, slightly more, not enough to make a big deal out of, but they're certainly catching up. And the dropout rates, the high school dropout rates in the last 20 years have plummeted for all groups. For Hispanics, they've been cut tremendously, more than half. It's just been it's an incredible piece of good news that we don't talk about enough. And so those are some of the things I think are really interesting about Latinos, not only in the U.S. but in Texas as well. And we'll have major ramifications for, I think, voter turnout. Younger Hispanic people are much more likely to be to have a high school education, and we know that that's a significant correlates significantly well with voter turnout as well.
Thanks, James.
Black Texans are much more concentrated. About a sixth of Black Texans live in just kind of central Harris County in Houston. Another sixth live in Dallas County. About almost two-thirds of Black Texans live in either the Metroplex or around Houston metro area. And Asian Americans, it's even quirkier. The highest concentration of Asian Americans is in Fort Bend County. I added on one little slice of Southwest Houston there. And while that's the most concentrated area for Asian Americans, there are still more Hispanic and Black people in District 4 there. About two-thirds of Asian Americans live in either the Metroplex or Harris County. And one other factoid I thought was kind of interesting when I did this is that that's big sprawling sixth district, which is kind of the rest of Texas. If you're not talking about the Metroplex or kind of the I-35 corridor, but the rest of Texas, only about 1% of that population is Asian American. There are very few Asian Americans in that big gray expanse. And one quirky fact is that in that big sixth gray area, more people identify as Native Americans than Asian Americans, while the state as a whole has about 5 or 6 times more Asian Americans. So these are the demographic models I've done. Any questions on that before we?
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely think it's interesting looking at the demographic data around Black Texans and that concentration that you showed, as well as looking at the and so when we look at that, we see that concentration is definitely in certain parts of Texas. Are you aware of any trends in terms of if concentration is increasing, or if when it comes to Black Americans in Texas, if they are starting to move into other parts of the state? And that may be something that needs further analysis. But seeing that concentration, it's interesting around that population, how different it is when you compare it to the white demographic breakdown, the Hispanic demographic breakdown. What are your thoughts around how that concentration is playing an impact?
I may be getting out over my skis just a little bit here by what I'm about to say, because some of what I'm about to say I've just seen while I was doing other things and haven't had a chance to really research in depth. But I will tell you that, for instance, the Black opportunity congressional districts in Texas, both of them seem to have had higher percentages of Black Americans, Black Texans, than they did 10 years ago. So it kind of looks like maybe there's a further concentrating in that area. But it could also just be that there are more Black Texans, and there are more Black Texans everywhere. I think we've seen, again, I'm not as confident in what I'm about to say, but it seems like we've seen quite a few Black people move from Louisiana, especially into the Houston area, and so this could be part of that.
And then looking at the Asian American demographic map, I'm curious if you have any thoughts around the growth of the Asian American community, which is a lot of people say is the fastest growing demographic, but what that looks like in Texas, and how Texas is seeing that growth in the Asian American community.
Yeah, Asian Americans in Texas tend to be somewhat better educated than Asian Americans elsewhere. I have a feeling, although I can't prove it, that many of the Asian Americans who live in that big sprawling number 6 gray area there are probably a small town's doctor. I think that comes up a lot. Or maybe they own a motel or a restaurant or something. That happens a lot in small towns, at least the ones I'm familiar with. So I would expect Asian Americans to expand and for this to be less concentrated as time goes on. But we don't have too much data to work with at this point. And so I'd probably be better off just deferring to people who really look at that question in depth. But it is a very expanding demographic group across the U.S. And obviously, we talk about Hispanic voters in Texas quite a bit, but shouldn't leave out Asian Americans. Certainly, the Asian Americans in like Fort Bend County or Southwest Harris County, those are somewhat Republican groups before, just slightly Republican, and Asian Americans, especially younger Asian Americans, have trended Democratic as in the last few elections.
Thanks, James. This continued breakdown is just fascinating to look over. And I know as people watch this, there may be more and more questions that will be interesting to hear from. So as we go through this, if you have questions, definitely let us know in the comments. Let us know what kind of data you would be interested in digging in even deeper, or if you have data that you'd like to share, and that way we can continue to see how we can understand the demographics within Texas and the impacts of those demographics in Texas.
Okay, so I'm going to turn to do something else with the Dave's redistricting app that it wasn't meant to do, which is to look at what some of the House districts in Texas. These are the Texas House districts. There are 150 of them. And I'm just going to talk about one way I divided those 150 districts into sextiles into 6 equal parts of 25 districts each. And so the specific thing I decided to concentrate on here that I worked a little bit on earlier in the week is which Texas House districts didn't really move much toward veto in 2018, and some of them, about a sixth of the districts, actually backed Obama more than Beto. And here I'm talking about just the margin of victory. The Romney in 12 won most of these districts that I'm going to talk about, and so this would be either Romney minus Obama and Beto minus Cruz, or vice versa. So we're just talking about the margins here, and who did better, Obama in 12 or Beto in 2018. The red districts, the reddish districts on the screen that I've colored here, are districts where Obama actually did better than Beto. There were something like 30 districts, and I've just colored the 25 where Obama did the most better, I guess is the way to say it. And then the blue districts are the ones where Beto did very much better than Obama. This is the top sextile, so it's Beto's 25 top gaining districts, and in most of those it was over 25% better than Obama, which is a pretty big margin change in just 6 years. The only thing is you can't really see the blue color that I've used for the Beto districts, because they're about the only one you can see is the one around the number 45 there. That's the way I've colored them, but they're almost all suburban districts, and so they just don't show up on this map very well. It's one of the ways maps can deceive. There are just as many red districts as there are blue Beto districts, but that's not the way the map looks.
Yeah. So this is a couple of things that are really interesting in looking at this and analyzing it in this way, is that, as you said, we're looking at where Obama outperformed Beto, and then where Beto outperformed Obama. And definitely visually, because of the way Texas is, it's a huge state, but it doesn't mean that we're populated the same in every corner of the state. So you can see where geographically there's a lot more spaces where Obama did better than Beto. But just to highlight the point you made, is that the areas where Beto did better than Obama are hugely populated areas. And not only that the percentage he did better, I think you said was over 20%. And so it is a huge increase what Beto did in those highly populated areas than what Obama did in 2012. And also, one thing that could be playing in this as well is what are your thoughts around, Obama being a presidential election cycle and Beto being a midterm election cycle?
Yeah, it matters a lot. I think one of the things that people have talked about with Beto is that he didn't do all that well in the Rio Grande Valley counties, the 4 counties at the very southern tip of Texas, um, compared to Obama in 12. But one of the reasons is, I think there are 2 factors that are kind of important to keep in mind, is that in midterms, we usually see fewer minority voters, and especially partly because minority voters, especially Hispanic voters, tend to be very young, and there are just fewer young voters in midterms. In presidential years, young voters usually turn out at a quite a bit higher rate than they do in midterms, while older voters is just somewhat better. So that's one of the things that's going on here. Those counties at the southern tip of Texas have a lot of young people, a lot of children, uh, and even the adults who can vote are very young, and so they're just less likely to have turned out to vote. The other thing in the Rio Grande Valley is that, for one reason or another, the 2012 Obama election was one of the best years for Democrats in those counties ever, which is a little surprising because 2008 Obama did better nationally than he did in 2012 by like several points. Yet in the Rio Grande Valley, that was their best Democratic year ever. So going back to I think probably like Lyndon Johnson or something, going back to 1970. It's just kind of an odd thing. My guess is, and I've kind of fooled around trying to be able to prove this, is that uh, is that Latinos may tend to back incumbents who are running for president just a little bit more than challengers, and so we may see actually Trump do a little bit better with Hispanic voters this time compared to other groups, because I think incumbents just do better with Latinos. But I don't have enough data to prove that. I have just a little bit of data that kind of suggests that. So I can't make that much out of it. But that's one thing to keep in mind here, is just that, as you say, 2018 really brought out a lot of suburban voters, highly educated voters, and those voters trended Democratic.
Yeah, and that's definitely going to be interesting to see after 2020 if your theory um, does play itself out, and as we continue to analyze data and establish ideas around why things are happening the way they're happening. And I just think highlighting also um, the age of of the population in the Rio Grande Valley, and continuing to track that to see as people get older, they continue to vote. Are they continuing to vote? How is their vote changing, or is their vote staying, within certain parameters? I think will be very interesting for us as Texans to see, because not only the Hispanic and Latino population, being as large as it is in Texas, being very, very important in terms of election outcomes, but especially in the Rio Grande Valley, because it has its unique, circumstances and parameters when it comes to data and looking at that participation in elections. So I think it'll just continue to be interesting as we track this in Texas, as things continue to change and people continue to get more involved in voting and everything that's happening.
Yeah, I'd also just throw in one element of caution, which is that Hispanic voters are just notoriously difficult to poll before an election, and the exit polls are usually somewhat less than satisfying, I think, also, and so sometimes it's just kind of hard to get a picture. until after the votes are in. I will also say that I saw some pretty good Pew Research, which is really good at polling. It came out with some data today that show that white Catholics were actually trending toward Obama or toward Biden compared to Hillary 4 years ago. White Catholics were trending toward Biden about as much as any group that they polled. Hispanic Catholics, on the other hand, were at the bottom of that list. And so it could be just difficult in polling, or it could just be that there's, just a little bit of a lag. But if my theory holds up, 2024, if Biden wins and runs for re-election, then that could be a huge, big year for Latinos voting Democrat in Texas. That would be my theory.
Thanks, James.
So I just wanted to then, since we can't see the Beto House districts very well on this map, I just wanted to go to some of the metro areas and kind of so that people can see that really as many districts backed Beto big as backed Obama by a bit. This is the Houston metro area, kind of southwest Houston. And there were, I believe, 6 districts, the 26th and 28th in Fort Bend County, as well as 4 more districts in kind of western Houston and western Harris County that were over 25% gains for Beto over Obama. So the 132, 133, 134, 138, those are all districts that trended toward Beto. And Dave's redistricting app really isn't set up for this. So in order to keep the numbers of the districts there, I had to leave like 1 precinct. So that's why you see those like single precinct numbers there surrounded by blue, but those were all areas, that's the areas in Houston that trended toward Beto. And one other thing to point out is that while there are several factors that I'm sure were important for Beto doing well, highly educated districts with a lot of college bachelor's degrees were his best districts. I mean, it lines up almost exactly with how districts that Clinton did better than Obama in 2016, and again in 2018, districts that Beto did really well in. Bachelor's degrees was really important, a really important factor. And so that's Houston. The Metroplex, kind of, there's an area that's north of Dallas, and then kind of where Denton County and Collin County and in northern Dallas County all come together. That was another group of districts that trended toward Beto, 64, 65, 106 in Dallas and Denton County, 66 and 67 in Collin County, and then 4 districts in Dallas County, 102, 108, 114, 115. Those all trended heavily for Beto. Going back 1 slide, I just point out that in Houston, the 134, District 134 there, that's the district that Sarah Davis holds. That district has more college degrees than anywhere in Texas. That's number 1. And number 2 for college degrees in Texas is the 108 that Morgan Meyer presently represents. So both of those districts trended heavily toward Beto, and both of those incumbent Republicans are in tough races this year. Even though those are very white districts, they're in tough races, and 50-50 whether they win. Going on, then the other area that might surprise some people is that even though Austin was already voting for Obama in huge numbers, Beto's gains there were pretty staggering. And so 47, 48, 49, 50 in Travis County, all were heavy Beto counties, Beto districts, as well as 136 and 52 in Williamson County. And then 45, which is Hayes and Blanco counties, that district that Aaron Zwiener represents, those were all big Beto gain districts. One thing that you'll note is that if we go back 1 slide, Denton County where there's a huge university, North Texas is there, and that I'm sure had something to do with what happened. Likewise, Texas State University is in San Marcos in Hayes County, and so that's one of the reasons 45 trended blue so heavily. And then there were, around the rest of the state, there were 3 other districts that aren't connected to these metroplexes in a way that made it easy for me to show a map. The number 14, which is in Brazos County, was also a big Beto district. That's where Texas A&M is. The 122, I think it is, in Bexar County that Joe Strauss used to represent, also trended heavily toward Beto. And then one thing that might surprise some people is that in Montgomery County, there was also a big Beto over Obama district, but it didn't gain much notoriety, or because Obama did so poorly there that adding 25%, taking off 25% of the Republican margin really doesn't get you very close. But in Montgomery County, the District 15, that includes the Woodlands, that was also a district that moved left quite a bit.
So this is
go ahead.
Fascinating seeing these trends, and especially just highlighting how Beto did so much better than Obama, and it really was concentrated around these areas in Texas where we have these major universities, and how college education is playing a part in terms of some of these increases around voting. So I think it's just fascinating looking at and seeing that area and breakdown. You know, in not that we can predict a whole lot or that we can guarantee any predictions, but seeing how this plays out in this upcoming election, do you feel like that trend is going to continue to hold, where areas with a higher concentration of college degrees are going to be leaning towards the Democratic votes? Or do you think with 2020, there's so many unique dynamics that there may be a couple of other things that are impacting any increases that we're going to see in the data?
Well, I'll tell you what the polling suggests, which is what I'm going to go with, because while I pretend to be an expert, I prefer to listen to people who really are experts. And I should have noted who said this, but one of the people who've seen polls across the U.S., different congressional all across the U.S., has stated that it's remarkable that in congressional districts, Biden is doing better than Clinton at about the same rate in all districts except Latino districts. It's a very steady national phenomenon. So it kind of looks to me like that's probably what's going to happen, and we'll have to see when the numbers come in. But my guess is that if you take Clinton's numbers and in 2016 and add a certain percentage, probably 7 or 8% to them, that's what Biden is going to get.
Awesome. Thanks, James.
You're welcome.
So now that we've looked at all this data, we definitely hope that it gives everyone a more opportunity to add to their perspective of Texas and looking at the work in Texas and how election results and outcomes and how demographics really play a part in those outcomes for Texas. I think it's clear that Harris County and Houston as a whole is doing a lot of work for Texas when it comes to not only demographics, but also in where we have diversity, Hispanic, Black, Asian Americans within Houston. And I think that's interesting to really make sure that we highlight, because the opportunity for Houston to help lead Texas into the space of what we're trying to achieve with Indivisible Text Ledge around Flip the Texas House. And then there's even bigger ambitions to flip in the entire Texas for the Electoral College flipping Texas blue, Houston is such a key part of leading that effort.
And,
And it's,
Alex, Alex, I gotta say, it's really great to have uh, somebody in charge of elections in Harris County, or people in charge of elections in Harris County, who actually want voters to turn out for a change. The 2018 election saw new people taking over, and they've done so much to make it easier to vote in Harris County.
and I want to highlight, because this kind of feels a little connected to the conversation we had earlier this week with the Texas LULAC state director and the lawsuit that was filed around absentee ballots and the drop-off locations, and why that decision by the governor equates to voter suppression, and why it impacts these Harris County in particular, because there are so many people, there's so much diversity within Harris County, and anything that is done to limit people's access to voting um, has a huge potential impact on the progress of flipping the Texas House or flipping Texas blue as a whole. And so it's I think the data, just the way you organize this and helped highlight this, just continues to help people understand the importance of the work that is being done in Harris County.
I'm glad you think so. Thank you very much. And I don't know if you know this or not, because it just came up late last night, but a federal judge actually blocked Abbott's order on the drop-off locations. And so until some other federal court reverses that, counties can go back to having multiple drop-off locations. That just happened.
Well, that is actually fantastic news. I have not seen that headline yet, so I'm glad we are able to share that here in our live session for anybody else who hasn't caught that. That is huge news, and the hope is that we'll be able to keep that for the election. But as we've seen with other things, you can look at the census, you can look at different things. These decisions unfortunately tend to have a couple of iterations before we land on the final decision. So with the early voting starting on Tuesday, with mail-in ballots already being sent into counties, the hope is that we'll be able to keep that, and that those locations will be able to operate throughout this entire election cycle, because access to voting, people voting safely, is going to be a huge important piece to what the outcomes in Texas are going to look like. So James, this has been phenomenal, and I'm really excited about sharing this data and this presentation that you have with everybody, but also really excited about future opportunities that we're going to be able to dive into the data, especially post-election as we lead into the Lege session. So James, I can't thank you enough for your time, all of the work that you've put into this, and just all of the observations that you continue to accumulate, so that we can help improve Texans' perspective and understanding of how we can move forward and make progress in Texas.
Well, Alex, you flatter me. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, James.
Thank you.